Good evening. There is a version of Washington that both parties have spent decades selling to the American people. It is a story of orderly democracy, of public servants working through the night for the common good, of a system that bends toward justice if you simply wait long enough. That is the product. That is the image. But underneath the marble and the flags and the televised hearings, there is a different Washington. A Washington that operates on a set of rules the public was never meant to understand. And once you see how the machine actually works, you cannot unsee it. This is what Washington is hiding from the American people. The two-party system is not a failure of democracy. It is a feature of something else entirely. The performance of disagreement is the most valuable product in American politics. Both sides need the other to exist, to rage against, to fundraise off of. The machine needs conflict because conflict drives attention, and attention drives money, and money drives the machine. It is a closed loop. Watch any cable news channel for an hour. The structure is identical. Outrage, commercial, repeat. The issues change, but the format never does. That is by design. A unified, Giorgia 1T populace does not need saviors. A divided, angry one will always vote against something rather than for something. And voting against is far easier to monetize. The machine keeps moving in the same direction regardless of which party holds the majority. The names on the doors change. The policies shift at the margins. But the fundamental architecture of power remains undisturbed. Start with who funds them. Before any bill is written, before any vote is cast, the money has already moved. Campaign contributions do not buy specific votes in most cases. That would be illegal, and it would be traceable. What they buy is something far more effective. They buy access. They buy time. They buy the quiet understanding that certain options are off the table. A pharmaceutical company does not need to bribe a senator. It only needs to ensure that the senator never seriously considers price controls as a viable policy. A defense contractor does not need to write the appropriations bill. It only needs to ensure that the question of cutting the Pentagon budget never reaches the floor with real momentum. The lobbying industry spends billions every year not to change laws, but to prevent laws from changing. The status quo is the product. Every year that passes without universal health care, without student debt reform, without campaign finance limits, without antitrust enforcement, is a victory for someone who paid to keep things exactly as they are. Follow the money. It always leads to the same place. Now let us talk about the border. Every election cycle, the border becomes a crisis. Television screens fill with footage of migrants, of overwhelmed agents, of humanitarian strain. And then the election passes, and suddenly the problem becomes less urgent. Until the next cycle. This is not cynicism. This is pattern recognition. The border is a real issue with real human consequences. But the way it is weaponized every 2 years reveals something uncomfortable. Both parties benefit from a permanent, unsolved crisis. One party uses it to rally its base around toughness and security. The other uses it to rally its base around compassion and reform. Neither party has any incentive to solve it, because a solved problem cannot fundraise. The same pattern repeats across every major issue. Crisis, outrage, fundraising, stalemate. Repeat. For ordinary Americans, failure is pain. For Washington, failure is funding. When the economy falters, when jobs are lost, when families struggle to afford groceries, the political machine sees opportunity. Every economic anxiety is a direct mail piece. Every foreclosure is a campaign ad. Every closed factory is a rally speech. Talk to a mother comparing prices in the grocery aisle. She is not thinking about the donor class. She is not calculating the marginal tax rate. She is wondering how the same cart of food costs 30% more than it did 3 years ago. She is wondering why her wage has not moved while the cost of everything else has. That woman is not stupid. She knows something is wrong. What she does not know is that the system has been carefully engineered to produce exactly this outcome. Inflation is complicated, but the failure to address its root causes is not complicated. It is intentional neglect, because solving the problem would require confronting the interests that benefit from the status quo. And those interests own the pencil that writes the policy. There is always money for war. The Pentagon budget grows every year. Billions for weapons systems the military itself did not ask for. Billions for overseas operations that Congress never formally authorizes. Billions for a national security apparatus so vast that no single person fully understands its scope. but ask for money to fix the water system in a rural town. Ask for money to fund mental health clinics. Ask for money to repair decaying schools. Suddenly, there is no money. The math is not complicated. It is a choice. Every budget is a moral document. And the moral of the American budget is that preparation for war matters more than investment in life. The military-industrial complex is not a conspiracy theory. It is a description of how Washington actually works. Retired generals become board members of defense contractors. Defense contractors hire former members of Congress as lobbyists. The revolving door spins constantly, and the public pays for all of it. With taxes, with debt passed to the next generation, with the quiet understanding that their government has different priorities than they do. Now let us talk about the media, not as a conspiracy, but as a structure. The modern political media is not designed to inform you. It is designed to keep you watching. And the most reliable way to keep someone watching is to make them afraid. Fear is the most valuable currency in political media. Fear of the other party. Fear of immigrants. Fear of economic collapse. Fear of social change. Fear of the future. Every channel has found its formula. Every host has mastered their particular brand of outrage. The result is a population that is simultaneously overinformed and underinformed. Overwhelmed with information, but starved of context. Flashes of breaking news, but no understanding of the systems behind them. This is not an accident. A confused population is a controllable population. A population that cannot agree on basic facts cannot organize around common solutions. And a population that cannot organize offers no threat to the existing distribution of power. Pay attention to the language. In Washington, words do not inform. They signal. When a politician says, tough, but fair, they are signaling to donors that the deal is done. When they say, we must have a national conversation, they are signaling that no action will be taken. When they say the American people deserve better, they are signaling that nothing will change. The language of Washington is designed to sound meaningful while committing to nothing. It is a vocabulary of evasion. Comprehensive reform means nothing will pass. Bipartisan concern means both sides will issue statements and move on. Thoughtful deliberation means the issue will be studied until everyone forgets about it. The public hears these phrases and assumes something is happening. Something is. The preservation of the status quo. Slowly, something is beginning to shift. The illusion is cracking. More Americans than ever now say the system is broken. Not just the party they oppose, but the system itself. Trust in every major institution has been declining for decades. Congress, the presidency, the courts, the media, the financial system. Every pillar of the old order is weaker than it was a generation ago. This distrust is not irrational. It is the natural result of a system that has repeatedly failed to deliver on its promises. When a generation watches their parents work harder for less, when they see bailouts for banks but foreclosures for families, when they observe that political dynasties persist regardless of election outcomes, they draw the only conclusion available: the game is rigged. And when people believe the game is rigged, they stop playing by the rules. The danger is not that Americans will become too cynical. The danger is that the cynicism will curdle into something worse. Disengagement. Contempt for the idea of democracy itself. A willingness to support anyone who promises to burn it all down, regardless of what comes next. That is the real crisis Washington refuses to name. It is not a crisis of policy. It is a crisis of legitimacy. But there is another possibility. The people who built this machine were not smarter than you. They were simply more organized. They understood that power flows to those who show up consistently over time. They built institutions, funded them reliably, and waited. The same strategy is available to anyone. It does not require a fortune. It requires persistence. It requires paying attention to local politics, where the machine is weakest. It requires showing up at school board meetings and city council hearings and county commission sessions. It requires running for office not because you want a career, but because you want to serve. That is how the machine was built. And that is how it can be rebuilt. The illusion is cracking. What replaces it depends on whether enough people are willing to look past the performance and see the machinery underneath. Once you see it, you have a choice. You can look away, or you can start building something better. The choice belongs to you. It always has.